all the speakers before, they kind of really gave a nice little preview to our simulation that we created for our nursing students here on this campus in the Department of Nursing for a community health course. So I'm going to go ahead and go through our slides. We had a charge to do a simulation for our senior community health students. And so we put together a nice little low cost simulation. And I'm just going to share that with you today. Before I go forward with the simulation itself, I'll talk about a little bit of facts that have already been shared yesterday and today. So a lot of those facts may look a little familiar, but they're really specific to North Carolina. And some of the ones that really stood out to me was by 2025, 1 in 5 adults will be 65 or older. And in our urban and suburban communities, we're most likely going to see the older population settle in there because a lot of them are really enjoying where they're at and not deciding to move on. So a lot of them are choosing to stay in North Carolina as they continue to age. And also we do have a lot of people that are relocating to North Carolina because of the mountains and other things that we do have here in North Carolina. So they're choosing to retire here. So therefore that's leading to the increase in our older population as well. The purpose of this project, as I was stating earlier, is just to describe to you what we did over in the Department of Nursing, a low cost. In simulation and anything, it costs a lot of money sometimes to do the things that we would like to do to provide effective healthcare, effective strategies for our students when learning how they can meet the needs in our community. So we were able to put together a low cost simulation for our students to learn how to provide care for the older population. And actually this patient was living in a rural community. So what we did a whole lot in coming together with our objectives, and we created a simulation scenario. It was an 8-hour day that we spent with our students. From 8 to 12, we had first encounter where the students were able to encounter the client in the home. The client was DC'd from the hospital. And so they went in and did their initial home health visit with the client, and then after lunch, we had our second encounter with our patient. Each student was provided different roles, and as you can see, the roles and expectations are there. We divided the students up. We had a community hospital nurse case manager. We had a local community center program director, the telehealth home health assessment nurse. This simulation did not have the telehealth. As we move forward, we're hoping to embed a telehealth nurse inside of this simulation. So for this simulation, we just had the home health assessment nurse. And we had an educator, and then we had some observers in this simulation as well. This was the scenario that we developed for this patient. NLN has a lot of nice scaffolding simulations that you can use. So we use one of the older adult simulations and kind of tweak that simulation to meet the needs for our objectives for our community course. It was a 60-year-old African American, and some of the things I want to highlight is some of the things that really was emphasized today. This patient had diabetes, type 2 diabetes. He was non-compliant with his diet and medication. And Dr. Rubin was talking about our community. He lived in a rural community far from health care. I think the nearest hospital was about an hour and a half away. He had a nice little local urgent care community center that he was able to go to that was about 30 minutes away. They would come and pick him up. Family was far away. We also see that he had a nice little store that was a family store that we created in our simulation center that he was able to go to and actually get snacks and some fresh vegetables. So we really tried to create a nice scenario that will cause our students to see our communities as is in the rural communities. And so it really was a telling scenario to kind of help give our students what they needed to meet the objectives. You could see the patient was discharged from a community hospital after having a fainting episode at the little market right beside his home. Passed out with blood glucose of 190 upon admission to the ED. So what I did was I was able to go online and actually get some pictures of different communities. So what you're going to see is our Community 1, and what I did was I staged the hall of our simulation center, and along that simulation center I embedded these pictures along the wall. So as the students entered into that part of the simulation center, they were able to see the different communities. And as Dr. Rubin was stating earlier, a lot of times our neighborhoods really reflect our patient of getting Alzheimer's and other things that could be taking place as they have some type of cognitive decline. So we staged different pictures. You'll see our Community 1 was a housing development, and that was our first community that we entered in down the hall. Our second community was another community where we saw there was a lot of trash along the road. They did not have any, there was low sanitation, no pickup from the sanitation department. And then we had another community as we got into closer to one of the cities was a homeless community. So we staged each one of these communities along the simulation center as our students walked to the patient's home. So we had them imagine themselves in their car as we were doing our windshield survey, going into the communities. They were able to see different qualities and different components of these communities. Let's see. And that was another community as well. This was actually a swamp area that they were approaching as we continued to move through. So really nice. We tried to stage it. This community here was right outside the patient's home, maybe within about 50 feet of walking distance. There was the community market, and you can kind of see what was outside of that community market as well, the environment itself. And I'm not going to be able to go in and show you some parts of the simulation itself because we did video it, but I'll just kind of speak to this. This slide actually showed the community apartment that we created. And you'll see the students were able to go in. We did have a live actor for this simulation, and he did show some decline in the questions that the students answered. And a lot of times in healthcare, we tend to judge patients and say that they're non-compliant by choice, but who's to say they may be non-compliant because of some of the mental decline that they are experiencing. He had a lot of different issues, family, social influences, culture influences that really played into a lot of his care and how he took care of himself. So they were able to go in and do a nice assessment of the home. And as you can see in one area on the table, he's got a lot of those processed foods that we talked about earlier this morning, and just a lot of different things that we picked up. The students were able to do a nice home assessment, and from this home assessment, they were able to develop a educational plan, let's see, for their second half of the simulation scenario that took place after lunch when they went back to the home to do a follow-up community assessment. So whatever they found out that first simulation initial visit, they devised a plan, and they were able to go back after lunch and go back and actually talk to the patient about some of those things they found, those hazards in the home. Because of some of the things that he was forgetting, they were able to make some visual brochures. They actually brought in like some food, some healthy snacks that were not processed. They gave the patient a lot of charts to kind of help him with his memory and kind of help him improve in the home, living by himself. Let's see. After the simulation, we did our debriefing. We asked the students what went well, and we did the SET-M survey as well. And from that SET-M survey, we were able to capture some reflections. The running themes were cultural sensitivity, increased confidence, therapeutic communication, and prioritization, care, and interventions. So these were some of the common themes that we saw from this simulation completed in our department. And my last comment today that we discovered from this low-cost simulation is that creating low-cost and effective community-based simulation can help students learn how to care for older adults with cognitive decline. It is essential to meet the needs of our aging population. Thank you so much.